Robert Burns's Tam O'Shanter is a kind of more mock Gothic and mock heroic poem. And if you learn nothing else from this class, you will at least learn where the Tam O'Shanter hat got its name. The poem is told in rhyming couplets of iambic tetrameter, which helps to give it a more comic feel. We have lines that are shorter, so the rhymes come faster, the story flows more quickly. And it's also significant that it's written in a Scots dialect, in keeping with Burns's reputation as an untaught Scottish ploughman, a reputation that he liked to cultivate but was largely untrue. So that choice of dialect is itself somewhat political in its focus on the particularities of Scotland as opposed to the universalizing tendencies of English culture. So we start by being introduced to Tam at the beginning of the poem, and we might wonder whether we're supposed to sympathize with him, like him, or think of him as a good-for-nothing lout, which seems also to be the case. Certainly the first few lines build sympathy with Tam in that the use of the personal pronoun we invites us to share his point of view. We are drinking just as Tam is. By contrast, Tam's wife is sitting at home, and she's described as our sulky, sullen dame, gathering her brows like gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. Emphasis here on the work required to stay angry at him, which again tends to align our sympathy with Tam, making his drinking seem relatively harmless. Although we're also told that he's foolish not to listen to his wife. How many lengthened sage advices the husband for the wife despises. We might wonder if this line is ironic or not. Is the narrator trying to get us on Tam's side, or is he trying to show us how foolish Tam is being? This is followed by lines that moralize on pleasure, which are written in standard English with a neoclassical diction. But pleasures are like poppies spread, you seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then melts forever, or like the borealis race that flit ere you can point their place, or like the rainbow's lovely form, vanishing amid the storm. These lines stand out in this poem because they're the only ones written in standard English. But what is its function in the poem? Do we discard it because it's English and doesn't have the local charm of Tam's point of view? Or does it seem to take on a more authoritative status because it's kind of giving it a moral pronouncement in standard English? Normally, we might expect that English would have that more authoritative tone, but because it's coming from Burns, it might be read as somewhat ironic that this seemingly authoritative explanation is not supposed to be taken at face value. The lines beginning "inspiring bold John Barleycorn" explains why Tam is not scared by the vision he sees. But also possibly implies that what Tam sees is a vision produced by his drunken state, inspired by bold John Barleycorn. We're not quite sure, and this is itself a common device in the Gothic to present the supernatural in such a way that it can be interpreted rationally. this is a defense mechanism whereby authors are able to deny that their work sanctions a belief in these dark forces. You could just say, no, we don't really believe in witches. Tam was just drunk. But on the other hand, it can also be a way of pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable in literature by incorporating supernatural content that challenges the authority of the rational world, even while making itself seem innocuous. We might also note the nationalism associated with the witches. Warlocks and witches in a dance, nay, cotillion Brent knew for France, but hornpipes, jigs, strathspeys, and reels put life and metal in their heels. So the point here that the witches are dancing traditional Scottish dances, and which have not been changed by the importation of supposedly more cultured dances, such as the cotillion from France. So the Gothic here takes not an otherworldly form of otherness, but rather it is this foreign other, France, that threatens Scottish culture. So interestingly, even as the witches are set up as the mock danger into which Tam stumbles, they're also strongly associated with a wholesome folk culture. Has Tam perhaps simply stumbled on a folk dance that he's interpreted as a witch's coven because of his state of intoxication? Similarly, the fact that the devil is playing the bagpipes for these festivities, all of this works to illustrate how Burns has been taken up as a representative of a certain nationalist sentiment, a focus on the particular customs and language of Scotland, resisting the centralizing and universalizing pull of standard English. Burns was very much a Scottish patriot, and in many ways he was laughing up his sleeve at the English society that idealized him as an untaught ploughman. So he's not just incorporating local color, he's asserting the cultural value of these traditions that he describes. Incidentally, there's an argument that English literature as a discipline was in fact created by the Scots, since there was an impulse towards the study and standardization of English that accompanied the Act of Union of 1707, in which England and Scotland combined to become Great Britain. The English couldn't be bothered to formalize the rules of their own language, but the Scots, in seeking to emulate the English, felt the need to do so. Robert Crawford's book, Devolving English Literature, explains this in very interesting ways. In lines 125 to 142, we see a Gothic excess made comic by the excessive detail as well, such as the gray hairs sticking to the bloody knife, up to the insistence at the end, Wimero, horrible and awful, which even to name would be unlawful. So even in comedy, Gothic horror is signaled as that which cannot be spoken. Here the joke seems to be that he's given this whole list of horrible things and then says, oh, there are more horrible things that he can't even name, as if the narrator is running out of ideas here. This poem also includes bawdy humor. The narrator upbraids his hero for peeping on the witches dancing around in their underclothes, but mostly because they're depicted as old withered hags. I wonder, didna turn thy stomach, which might also make us ask about a strain of anti-feminism in the poem, or we might also wonder whether Burns is equally critical of men and women. Burns himself acquired quite a reputation as a womanizer. Finally, at the end of the poem, Tam makes his escape, but the mock moral is provided at the end, that if you are thinking of drinking or peeping on women, think ye may buy the joys o'er dear, remember Tam O'Shanter's mare. In other words, reminding us actually that Tam has essentially escaped punishment. It's only his horse that has suffered for what he's done, and even that in a sort of comic way. Losing his tail is not such a drastic punishment. We might also compare this to the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which provides a moral that seems ineffectual at summing up everything that's preceded it. So here Burns provides a deliberately comic moral that suggests perhaps that poetry does not need to have a moral conclusion.